So a short break and we're back. And many of you that are familiar with the Centicle MBA Festival will know that we love to embed alongside all of this great admissions advice that we have from the gatekeepers, the sort of insights about the MBA job market. And we're better to turn to the experts themselves. These panels are just as popular as those admissions panels, as I was explaining to three wonderful panelists that are with me for the next hour. Zoe McLaughlin, the head of employer engagement at the London Business School. Zoe, it's lovely to see you again. We're also joined by Natalia Milani Andre. Natalia is the Director of Career Development at IMD in Lausanne. Natalia, thank you for joining us. And from South Kensington, Andrea Ferreira, who is the head of full-time MBA careers at Imperial College Business School. Thank you, all three of you. And I guess here we are in early October. And certainly, perhaps IMD a little different with a January class start, but you know, for many recruiting in June, you now have a much better sense of where the job market sort of is right now. It's been such a volatile and uncertain 18 months. Zoe, just starting with you and the most recent class of 2021. What did placements look like? You know, the industries that bounced back were recruiting LBS graduates in big numbers. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I think overall, employment rates remained pretty positive throughout the last couple of years. So even the class before this one, you know, the reporting rates were healthy. It was perhaps just that the sector mix and the destinations were a little bit different. But certainly if we look at the class that has just recently graduated, you know, we're confident that that employment rate will also be positive. I would say how it's potentially moved slightly is that sort of last year, perhaps some of the more traditional industries that were client facing, like consulting, there had been a slight dip, and that has kind of come back to life a little bit more, and consulting numbers will be a bit more healthy perhaps than they were last year. But I think the massive surge in tech recruitment that happened last year has continued. I think possibly one of the only interesting trends we've seen, which perhaps doesn't track against what, you know, is being reported at a sort of a more national level, is entrepreneurship. We've seen a slight dip in entrepreneurship from the recently graduated class, which actually, I was looking at some stats from the Centre for Entrepreneurs, and apparently has been a 10% increase in people starting businesses, but that hasn't been from our MBA cohort. And I don't know if that has been a lack of certainty, perhaps the desire for a slightly more secure paycheck. But I think that's a trend that perhaps we'll see increasing for the class we currently have, because I think we will bounce back to having the usual amount of entrepreneurs we normally have. But yeah, it's looking good, but I can't say actually that it's ever really looked bad. Our students have been resilient and they have done well throughout the last couple of years.
Right. And Zoe, as you sort of compare to other, you know, economic downturns, arguably this was actually quite a short economic downturn. It's obviously been enormous disruption on a wider sort of societal level. Have recruiters sort of learned from the past, you know, that importance of ongoing engagement? There was great uncertainty, but you were seeing that recruiters, you know, were still determined that they're always looking for top talent.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, for recruiters who perhaps slightly turned down, you know, the volume on their recruitment last year, they were still very engaged with us. You know, they did everything they could to move internships remotely. They pushed back start dates. They were very keen not to cut off that pipeline, because as you said, in previous, you know, in the global financial crisis, there was definitely a real cut off to the talent pipeline, and companies suffered because they then didn't have the talent to grow and rebound. And I think that definitely didn't happen. I think, you know, the pipeline never got cut off. It might have slowed down slightly, but there was always a trickle. And so it has been relatively easy, I would say, for companies just to slightly bring targets back up to normal levels without any, I would say, loss of brand on campus. Students still feel very positively towards those companies. And to a degree, it's sort of almost passed without mention in the campus community. People noticed consulting numbers were slightly down, but it didn't really prompt any great anxiety because the firms were always present. They were always engaging with us.
Right. Andrea, the business school at Imperial sits within life sciences and medicine, engineering, everything else that's going on within the wider Imperial College. So does that sort of impact, what are the trends that you've been seeing? Zoe talked about, certain sectors had pulled back, but others, stepped forward. What have you seen with the graduating class this summer?
It's interesting because I fully agree with what Zoe was saying around numbers have been kind of keeping quite stable. It has been challenging for the class graduating in 2020 because they graduated into the peak of uncertainty, really. It wasn't even the peak of the pandemic, it was the peak of uncertainty, and that can be quite detrimental for business and the recruitment markets. But yeah, the tech industry has been recruiting a lot for us, and particularly in some areas that Imperial focuses on with the link with the STEM university around sustainability, fintech, and health tech have been really areas for growth in our student body, particularly at MBA level. The other thing that we are seeing, and this is kind of from the very recent graduating class, is that consulting is definitely back, and we are seeing very positive and promising numbers in the kind of first hires for the year. So that is looking promising. I would agree with the entrepreneurial focus of some of the students, but for the class that just graduated, actually the class of 2020 has a strong number of entrepreneurs that are now basically finishing their first one-year cycle and successfully leading those businesses. So it's interesting. I guess they had so much time at home at some point that they actually had the opportunity to pursue a career search while also pursuing some of the business opportunities they wanted to focus on and actually put them to the place where they actually can take them to market. So that's interesting.
Right. And of course, with Zoe's comment about entrepreneurs, and you're seeing something similar, but it is there's a longer game, because I'm sure when we look at graduates Imperial 5-10 years down the road, they've consolidated the MBA experience in industry, consulting. Do you then see a big jump in the numbers of those that create a startup or take an entrepreneurial path later on?
Definitely. Actually, it's one of the areas why some of the students decide to move to London and decide to go for a school like Imperial, really, because of the strong kind of entrepreneurial community, and particularly in certain areas when it links to the Faculty of Engineering or the Faculty of Medicine, that they can leverage that research and the world-leading researchers in there. And we see quite a big disparity, actually. So some students come to the program with the goal of finding potentially a co-founder with the right technical skills and launch those businesses while on the program. And then others are looking at it as a longer term career plan, and with the opportunity to also kind of get some experience in this new industry, get experience on the kind of tech side of it, most likely for 1 or 2 years, and then eventually launch their businesses 2 to 5 years down the line. Yes.
Right. Well, I'm not sure if they put it in their applications. I'm aware of some students that hope that they would find their life partner at business school, but co-founders, that makes perfect sense too. Natalia, from IMD's perspective, and of course you have a class that graduates at the end of each calendar year. So I guess you're looking back on the last 10 months and the sort of opportunities. What sort of shifts and trends have you seen among those that graduated 9-10 months ago?
Yeah, so our class graduated in December, and mainly what we saw, it was like a delay in placement. So if you looked at our figures 3 months after graduation, it was like 10 points lower than the year before. But then 6 months, we were at the same rate. So companies were kind of waiting. They delayed the recruitment until like maybe a company that would recruit in September, they started recruiting in November, December, when they were sure about the perspectives of the next year. But then placement was fine. It's true that, we usually have a lot of hiring in healthcare. But last class, it was 30% of the class moving to healthcare and health tech, mainly in Europe, and then manufacturing and technology. So all those areas like increased compared to previous years. Mainly the area that decreased a little bit compared to the past, it was consulting, because it's true that last year consulting was like holding off. What we're noticing this year is that actually it has been increasing rapidly. Like actually we have like, now we are like in the middle of our recruitment season. Well, in the middle, in the like the deep part, because they graduate in December. We have like an increase of like 20-25% of company presentations, company engagement. And that was actually being like, business is picking up, companies are hiring across all industries. Like we have healthcare, we have consulting, like every consulting firm is back, and they expect to hire, like, you know, to do big hiring. Consumer goods, retail, industrial products, like all those areas are growing. What we do see, it's now like, it actually has been thanks to COVID and the virtual environment. So many companies that weren't able to hire before, because, you know, we are a 100 students class in Switzerland. It was not, like, for budget reasons, time reasons, it was not so easy to come. Now companies can do online presentations, and especially all the first rounds, the first parts of recruitment are virtual. So it's more efficient, and we're actually being able to reach more recruiters. And also, like, recruiters are another trend. Recruiters are engaging global teams. So before, for example, like, you would have consulting centralizing the global recruitment from Switzerland, but it would be the Swiss office that would come to talk about the firm and talk about the opportunities. Now they are actually organizing coffee chats with every single office in the world where our students are interested in. So basically, it has opened up. We have more opportunities. It's amazing. I have been working in careers for like 8 years, and it's the first time that I hear students coming to me and saying there is so much around. There are so many opportunities. Like, I open internet and I see so many jobs, and I have never seen that before. Yeah.
It's keeping all of you, I'm sure, very busy as
Yeah.
you sort of help them and guide them and shape those experiences. Zoe, if I had asked you 2 years ago, okay, so what will the job market of 2020 look like? And we had no idea what was coming down the road for all of us. So maybe that crystal ball, you know, we just throw it away. But I guess, I mean, you're working with individuals, whether it's 15, 18, or typically 21 months at LBS, that themselves are sort of making a forecast, you know, of where they're looking to be. How do you, when you first sit down with them and sort of think about that career vision, you're not trying to guess the demand for big pharma in 2024. What does that first discussion look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's twofold. I think it definitely is centered on the student. It starts with the student, that discussion. It's very much, you know, our first intervention with students who join us and with Career Centre is getting to understand who they are, their values, their skills, their story. So we do a number of visioning workshops. We do a number of coaching interventions to just really get to grips with what are the themes of a career that will make that student feel fulfilled. And that, you know, different people have different levers, whether that's financial gain, whether that's making impact in the world, whether that's the learning curve. Everyone is slightly different. And we try and identify what that mix looks like, and then think about where, you know, which sectors, which functions, which geographies we can map to that sort of that profile, I guess. So there's sort of that piece, but then there is definitely the insights that we derive in our team, because obviously we're out working with employers across the world, across sectors, across functions, to understand what's hot right now. Where is the demand going to be? What are the skills gaps? So that we can also help diagnose some options as well. I mean, many of our students already have very, very strong opinions when they join, and they will want to stick true to that, at least to give it a try. And then maybe change later on. And some come saying, don't have a clue, this is what I want to do, give me some inspiration, and we can also help them. So it's very much, you know, a game of two halves. I think for us, the advantage of the longer program is that they have that chance to try an internship, to try different projects in different sectors, really understand. I mean, if I could get a £5 note for every student who said, I want to be a banker, I want to be a consultant, and then after doing an internship said, actually, I'm entirely clear that I never want to do that again, I'd be rich, because that journey is something that the kind of program allows them to do. And I think it's a really huge value. I mean, it's the value for me of the MBA experience.
Right. I think you should up the stakes. It should be at least a £20 note, if not 50.
I was trying to be sympathetic to inflation. I'll keep it low.
Yeah, managing their student budgets. I mean, Andrea, as you know, talking about sort of expectations. Natalia also said, well, through the pandemic, the world has also opened up too. This is not just recruiting in the City of London or at the Old Street Silicon Roundabout. Are you seeing that in terms of perhaps that field of vision where students are then looking has completely opened up because there aren't those same geographic limitations?
Yes, we've seen that, and we've also seen how that is affecting or kind of influencing the timelines for recruitment. Because in the past, we will see students coming to London for a one-year intense program, as the Imperial College Business School is, and focusing on only UK-based opportunities for the first half of the program, and only then, of course, in line with recruitment timelines in other regions, but also in line with their own kind of thinking and experiencing of living in London and studying in London and contacting with so many companies in London, only then perhaps looking to go back to their own region. And now what we see is that all those opportunities at a global level are actually on the table from day one, and they can see and contact with employers, with alumni, with professionals, just from their campus in London, but they can do that even now in September, October. So in a way, that opens up lots of opportunities for them. It also adds a lot of the complexity around what should be their plan A, what should be their plan B, and where should I put my focus and my effort? Well, I'm already too busy trying to kind of navigate the Imperial ecosystem and learning all the core modules, because that's what they are doing right now. So we definitely see that as an opportunity, sometimes as a challenge for students to also manage that, and something that as a careers consultant, we bring into the conversations and try and kind of help students to prioritize, to streamline some of the opportunities, and make sure also that they understand how some of those efforts around understanding different industries that are completely new to them are actually global efforts. And an industry might be very interesting in a certain region, but it might not be what they would like to be focusing on in a different industry, because they might be ahead or behind in how companies are developing and looking and investing in those regions. One of the things that we do that I find is quite interesting, and some of the students, particularly the ones that struggle with the idea of hitting the running in September when they have so many things going on, we have some of those initial conversations over the summer. So actually, we launched our careers primer in May, prior to the start of the program, and so that whole piece of self-awareness around career experience, leadership, career influences with a diverse pool of students that is particularly important to us, but also, of course, the career capital elements. All of that is something that we invite them to run through during the summer, together with sector updates and insights from different industries. So hopefully when they join us on campus, when they start working with our dedicated careers consultant, that initial piece of then kind of mapping things together is already underway and is not something completely new. We do, however, do not encourage them to kind of narrow down their options too early. So we do want them to be able to explore after they are on campus, and of course using the experience in the cohort as well. Of course, not having the opportunity to do projects or internships in a one-year program, we do want to bring that early into the classroom and explore that through the extracurricular activities and the experiences of the cohorts.
Yeah, well, of course, ask any MBA graduate what they should have known on day one of the program. It's, well, prioritizing time it sounds that you're also then helping them in that sort of channeling of their energies for the career search. Natalia, the IMD's class continues to grow. I think it'll soon be up to 110 or 115, but already with 100 graduates, 100 distinct backgrounds, 100 unique experiences. Are there nevertheless some sort of common characteristics that you'll find in an MBA graduate, and how that then sort of plays out in the sort of careers that they pursue?
Yeah, I think, well, in general, the IMD MBAs are more experienced than the usual MBAs. They have around 7 years of work experience. And many of them have already had some leadership experience. So they come very focused on improving their leadership skills. Like many of them want to follow like, you know, a general manager, like that kind of career path, that kind of career growth. And they want to focus on that. In terms of careers, like they are open to explore. And with all the, like, we have a leadership stream that really works on their self-awareness. We also, in careers, we help them through that, to ask themselves questions, to understand what are the motivations, what's meaningful for them. And I think they learn to like validate their decisions and make well-informed decisions. So what we see now is that like, and what we have been doing in careers, and I think the last 2 years have helped, is that focus on the future, like focus on the long-term career vision, where you want to be in 10 years from now, and find like thinking about the plans, like different ways to get there. Like before, people were very focused on, I will go for my plan A, for my dream job, and if that doesn't work out, then I'll look for something else. I think now, with all the uncertainty and seeing how things can change from one day to the other, they are more open to like really opening up, exploring different options and working in all of them, being more accountable and you know, working hard to make sure they find opportunities that will all take to that eventual career like path, but in different ways. So hopefully at the end of the journey they can choose, but if not, at least they are in the right direction. So it's like a more mature, like a mature self-aware approach. Like they have asked themselves the questions before coming, and while they are here, that's why we try to push.
Right. And a question that's come in from one of our viewers, and do keep coming with your questions. I sometimes struggle to keep up with them, but feedback that you've had at IMD from employers in regards to the skills and expertise that they want MBA students to have, that maybe have been identified through the pandemic. You know, is it different skills to then work remotely, the resilience? What are the sort of characteristics that you're getting feedback about? Yeah,
it's, well, apart from the typical, like that still remain constant, like critical thinking and communication, but it's being adaptable, being flexible, being able to make decisions in uncertain environments, in like without a lot of clarity. It's I think it's mainly that, and being able like to work with cross-cultural teams, but more than ever, because now it's not only, now it's like actually not cross-cultural there, it's working with global teams that people can be located in different places. So being used to the new technologies, working virtually, dealing with, engaging in that way, and being good leaders in that new environment where you have, as before, cross-cultural teams, but also you might not have the personal interactions. So it's more about, it's soft skills, like really more than that adaptability. And I think that might be the reason why the MBA recruitment is growing is growing now, because like companies are realizing that they need this kind of people that have diverse backgrounds, people that have lived in different, like an IMD, they need to show international experience to come. Well, I think many MBA students, but international experience to have one work here, like working with cross-cultural teams, and that's what companies need now. These people who can adapt and can lead in that situation.
Right. Zoe, as you think about, how your own team and the whole career services at London Business School continues to evolve, are there skill sets that you've emphasized through the last 18 months, or just a changing global landscape, even things like networking and how somebody might effectively do that, or being noticed in the next steps of their career? How have you tried to sort of look to respond and adapt to those changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think the critical for us, and you touched on it slightly there with networking, has been storytelling, because I think being able to make connections with people, whether that's for recruitment purposes or in your career, and to be an effective manager, it's about that ability to be your authentic self and build a relationship with someone, even through a webcam. And so there has been a lot of anxiety from students, but also demand from the market to help them be ready to tell stories and build connections, whether that is virtually or in person. So there has definitely been a greater emphasis on storytelling. So pitching at a sort of a crude sense, but also just more generally that ability to convey who you really are in an authentic way has been critical. That's very much on the soft skills side. I would say there has been an increase in a demand for hard skills related to tech, regardless of which sector a candidate is going into, a student is going into. The greater emphasis on virtual engagement and digital has meant that a lot more companies are looking for evidence of machine learning comfort or ability to use SQL and these kinds of skills. So we have introduced things like coding languages into the curriculum and into sort of optional workshops, so that students can gain those hard skills as well, just to make sure that they have a profile that feels modern, of the moment, and in demand. So I think it's definitely, those two things are the critical things. The sort of the comfort with ambiguity, which I think is something that I have to say is always the thing that MBAs we get the feedback from employers of the gap is they just didn't seem that comfortable with being thrown into this completely unexpected situation. And we see that in Career Centre because we prepare students for consulting interviews, we prepare them for banking interviews, we prepare them for technology whiteboard exercises. And so they like to feel prepared. And when they're given something slightly off the cuff, they'll often come back to us in careers and say, that was really unfair. They asked me this really unfair question. And this is something we're still grappling with, of how we can kind of create that discomfort for them in what is a safe environment, so that when they've got that muscle when it comes to being out in the real recruitment environment. So we're trying that through various like gamified workshops, through various experiential learning opportunities, essentially trying to make our students uncomfortable now, so that when they feel that discomfort in a recruitment environment, they're a bit more ready for it. But that's still something we're working on, because I think there's more to do there for us.
Right. Andrea, with what Zoe's describing, and as you think about both the personal and professional development that is at the heart of that MBA experience, it strikes me you're building a bridge. Employers and the sort of skill sets they're looking for an MBA, even the perceptions they might have of the skill sets they already have. And it's one thing to say, well, SQL, Python, coding skills, but these softer skills. Do you find sometimes that in building that bridge, how are you sort of holding up the mirror to the candidate to have that level of awareness, to recognize that, handling ambiguity, Zoe captured it very well in terms of the unsettling question that they weren't ready for. I mean, that's a phenomenal support that you're providing MBA students. I almost feel that it's heavily undervalued in what, all three of you do at your respective schools, but that's a big part of your work.
It is a big part of our work. And I think that there is an element of getting ready for a recruitment process, but there's also an element of being in the moment and being kind of fully self-aware and being able to convey what is the value that you bring to the table. And that's an element that we focus on as careers consultants a lot, because of course, most of our students are targeting roles that are really at the intersection between technology and those kind of human elements that we have been talking about. So they need to know a little bit of each language here and create those connections and really figure out in some organizations what is their added value, because some organizations are of course very well structured and very established in how they recruit and the types of roles. But as we see more and more industries being disrupted by technology, some of those industries are actually exploring and seeing what's the best way to drive that change and to manage that change and to impact their consumers and all of that. So it is very important that each student is very aware of what they bring to the table. And so having that conversation with different people and then coming back to their careers consultant to debrief that conversation is precisely what we try to do. For example, one of the things that we did this year, we kind of swapped things around, and they do a development center, a full day development center that they know very little about in their second week of induction. And the way that we designed the provision is that they get feedback from someone else that they have never met. So we bring in external assessors to do that. And is about the feedback conversation they have with that person and how they can then bring it to the whole of their career strategy with the help of the dedicated careers consultant. It's also how we think about students' experience in general, is finding kind of the opportunities within the year and within the Imperial context to really help them go beyond what they planned for and stretch their abilities and implement the new skills pretty much straight away. So being part of the Student Investment Fund, for example, they have to make those decisions very early on. And so we try to kind of create the opportunities and kind of throw some of the curveballs along the way to create that feeling of having to deal with the uncertainty and with changing conditions, which is very, very important, but to a certain extent, very difficult to practice unless you experience it.
Right, because my sense, we talk about courses in strategy and finance and marketing and supply chain, all of these, great areas to be studying. But what you do at the heart of this business school experience really is quite magical. That remind me, Natalia at IMD is part of that sort of leadership path and a leadership journey. I don't know if they're sort of therapists or psychologists, but IMD students actually have access to individuals to look at all of these different sort of areas of their personal development. Have I understood that right?
Yes. Actually, the leadership stream, it has classes. Like, the idea is that they understand like their weaknesses, their strength, their values, their leadership style, and then that program is supported with a leadership coach with whom they have regular conversations at a personal level, but then also those coaches work with their study groups. And then they have also a PD, it's called Personal Development Elective, and it's a Jungian psychoanalyst that it's not mandatory, but most of the students have it. So they are constantly coached and they get feedback. They get feedback from the leadership coaches, from the analysts, from the classmates, the professors. It's feedback. It's constant 360 feedback coming from everywhere to work on that, like really self-awareness and knowing yourself. And that's the difference. And that's what we do with them too. Like in careers, they have a career advisor to discuss their own particular plans and path and ideas. But then we also have a mentoring program that we run with alumni. And most students do have mentors, and then we work also with external consultants. So it's about that. It's about getting feedback, but also getting feedback from different people. And that is funny sometimes, because you get a student like telling you, like, I delivered my elevator pitch to this person and they told me it was great, and then I gave it to this other consultant and that person didn't like it, and they get upset at you. In careers, it's like, you are sending us different messages, and it's like, no, we're exposing you to the world, and you need to have that empathy. You need to adapt. You need to deliver in the way that you find suited for the person that is in front of you. But then also you need to be yourself, and you will connect with some people and you won't connect with others, and that's fine. Like in recruitment, if you don't connect, like it's nice when they come and see you, like, I don't think that interview went well. I like for example, in a consulting, the case went well, but in the fit, I really didn't feel the fit, and I don't think I'm a fit for that company. And that's good. Why would you join them? So it's about that, exposing to different peoples and trying, like, they need to understand that you need to adapt, but also that you need to be yourself and stay true to that.
Yeah, and so with all of that feedback available, perhaps one other important group, Zoe, is the Alumni Network, and through their industry experience, how are students, or even as recent graduates, how are they then able to engage with one another? To find out about industry opportunities, or hey, there's this opportunity right now. How are the alumni then involved in careers?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I probably speak for all business schools when I say this, in that, the alumni community are really committed to the success of successive classes. So they are a fantastic resource for our students. And I would say it actually starts even slightly earlier, making sure that students see their fellow students as also a fantastic resource for career networking. So we always kind of publish internship directories and pre-MBA experience directories so that students can network with each other and call upon people who have perhaps worked in industries they're interested in. And it's the same with alumni. We'll organise events throughout the year, which gives students opportunities to network with alumni around key thought leadership topics or around key industries. And then we obviously have an alumni directory that students can use, and we have alumni clubs they can network with. I think the critical thing for us, though, is helping manage how students use that effectively, because I think obviously for our poor alumni who work at, say, McKinsey or Google, they are going to get 500 eager emails on day one saying, hey, I really want to work for you. So for us in careers, that's part of that networking training, that networking skills development, of helping students understand how to get a good hit rate out of cold calls or emails that they're sending out, how to build some sort of hook, whether that's shared experience or shared aspirations that help build that bridge between the student and the alum, and helps them sort of stand out from the other students. So I think it's a fantastic resource. I still think it needs strategic use. And I think any student who joins us who thinks I'm just going to spam email, the entire LBS alumni community, someone will give me a job, that's definitely not the way forward. But used strategically, I mean, if we look at student surveys, we look at student feedback, they will consistently say that the Alumni Network was an absolute critical part of them securing their job. And that is, brilliant. And it's part of the value that we offer and that we work closely with in Career Centre to help sort of engage and make it useful.
Right, and as we stay on that theme of alumni, Andrea, sometimes there's obviously a lot of focus on the first position coming out of business school, but I am now the alum of the program, perhaps 3 years, 5 years, 7 years out. Do you then get comments from alums that sort of say, hey, we did this workshop together during the program, and it's helped me in my salary negotiations, it's helped me in sort of going up the ladder, it's helped me in transitions, because it continues to pay them back through a lifetime of their career, not just that first position coming out of the MBA.
Yeah, we do position lots of the work we do in the personal leadership journey, which is our career modules, along those lines. So this is not just about your immediate next job, it's about your kind of lifelong skills around networking, around development, around even the ability of self-reflect, get feedback and learn and use it in a strategic way. And we did have a lot of that feedback actually during the pandemic when it all started, because some of the alumni actually came back to us say, do you remember that workshop or that case that we talked about and it seemed very far away from our context? Actually, now I'm using it. Or do we remember how I struggle with, I don't know, an elective that was shared across all of our MBA programs, working with students potentially on our global online program based in a different time zone, and how they actually now had to do that on a daily basis with their teams. So yeah, we do have a lot of that. And I think that the Alumni Network is important in terms of helping students finding jobs, but also important in terms of acting as almost like role models in terms of the areas that are open for them, particularly for students that are looking at niche areas, or for students that come from nationalities or from diverse backgrounds that are not as well represented in London sometimes. Actually, those are like the popular alumni that get all the invitations and all the connections and all the requests in the first week of term, because they can see a way forward and they can see something that they didn't kind of imagine as possible as a step straight after the MBA, but someone has actually done it. So one of the elements we focus on with the students is really targeting, of course, people that are doing the kind of roles you want to do and the kind of working the kind of companies you want to work for, but also targeting people that have done a similar transition. And learn from that experience and learn how that kind of shaped their leadership profile and their impact in that industry. That's a lot of what we could try to focus. And of course, also kind of remind students that they have a year. It's not long, but it's a year. So kind of pace yourself and be strategic about how you use those resources. You don't really need to contact the whole of the network on week one, right? So think about what kind of questions, how can you build from conversations into the next one and the next one and the next one.
Andrea talks about transitions, and Natalia, the MBA in and of itself, this significant transition. As you look at a wider market, there are more and more specialized masters, very often at pre-experienced, earlier stage career. There's the exec MBA. People are talking about how we will just learn things in modules as we continue to work. But you've said, well, as I look at the job market for 2021 and ahead, so many opportunities, they've got this extraordinary global reach. So what is it about the MBA at this stage, after 5, 6, 7 years of work, going back to school full time, taking this time, that really gives it its enduring value and sets you up for the next stages of your career?
Yeah, so I think the looking forward, the MBA will remain relevant, because especially for people that are looking for a general management kind of career path. So I do think that the specialized masters make a lot of sense, for people who want to pursue careers within a particular function, within a particular area. That makes a lot of sense. But those who want to look at a broader picture, who want to have this general manager approach to their career, the MBA gives them the tools. It gives you the holistic view of business, and which is what you need for that. And it also gives you the leadership part, they actually working on yourself, giving you all the leadership skills that you need to be a manager and a future leader. And if you look at companies, I think it's the same thing. When they are looking to recruit for particular niche functions, it makes sense for them to recruit. If you want a finance professional, you would recruit them coming from a MIF or that master, or a big data, something like that. But if you are looking to fill the pipeline of future leaders, then the MBA makes sense for them. It's a pool for them to recruit.
Right.
So
right.
yeah.
I'm going to try to bring together 3 or 4 of our viewers' questions into one. That's a big challenge, and it's to do with location. We have talked about that global reach, but nevertheless, whether it's London or it's Lausanne and big pharma, or so much going on in London. Zoe, with you, someone's sort of saying, well, is London going to be good for media tech or for the renewable energies industry? It's London, right? So chances are it will be. But how can any sort of applicant, as they think about sectors, where can they inform themselves? How can they, even connect with the school to get a sense of, London Business School's already doing these things with media tech or with the renewable energy industry, to get a sense of, how London as a location will then give them a natural sort of access to those industries and sectors?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a degree, it's not necessarily about connecting with London Business School, because I say this with no arrogance that the school is fully networked in with any burgeoning sector or any hot sector. I mean, our activity within the sort of the Silicon Roundabout area, within all of the techs. I mean, we were joking about this, that we're now at 70 branches of tech, you know, prop tech, health tech, food tech. I mean, it's endless. So to a degree, for me, I would say if you are interested in tech and the burgeoning tech scene, there are so many organizations operating out of London. You know, I mean, you should have a subscription to Wired. You should be joining some of these kind of associations, organizations, conferences that are happening in London, because anything that's going on in London, you know, LBS, Imperial, and even schools in, you know, IMD and schools throughout Europe will be engaging with that scene, because there is a really nice sort of symbiotic relationship between our schools and what we're doing in terms of developing thinkers and leaders, and what, you know, is happening in those industries. So to me, the focus should be on the market, and having the confidence that the school that you're applying to would have the necessary connections. But obviously you can always reach out to student ambassadors, alumni, the recruitment and admissions teams. If you're genuinely, you know, if you have a very niche tech interest and one of that list of 70, then obviously do reach out to the school's admissions team and ask if they can connect you with someone who could give you more detail. But I think I could confidently say, you know, business schools will be working hand in hand with those burgeoning industries. There will always be opportunities for passionate students. And what I would add to that is, you know, one of the key selection criteria when it comes to startups and tech firms that come to campus to recruit is they want demonstrated passion from students in their industry. So they want to look at your LinkedIn profile and see that you have been commenting on and sharing and writing, you know, articles about that particular tech industry. They want to see that you're part of particular networks, that you're going to various professional events already. That's before you even join the school. So I would almost say you can combine doing your research with polishing your CV at the same time, because it's going to be valuable for you when you're coming to actually look at careers.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And obviously, if I was about to become a long-distance lorry driver, there would be any amount of work for me in the UK. Whether it's about Brexit, it could be a wider question about, you know, H-1B visas in the US. But I suppose, Andrea, from your perspective, Britain and its hunt for top talent, the impact of Brexit, you know, do you feel that it's changing or even expanding post-MBA opportunities for your graduates?
Well, it's always a tricky question, because, of course, international students do focus a lot on those elements, and companies will have different ways of operating in that kind of international hiring space. But what we see is that for the right candidates and for the right kind of skill set, we have never seen that as an obstacle. So of course it is a numbers game. It's offer and demand. Of course it is. Some of the changes recently in the UK have actually made it easier for students to stay over for a few years, a couple of years after they graduate. So that is interesting from a kind of point of view of the immediate job after the MBA, and we'll still to see how that is actually going to evolve. But the reality is that we don't expect that the kind of jobs our students go and secure after the MBA, they will have lots of difficulties around them being eligible for a sponsorship later on after the graduate scheme runs out. It is always an interesting one, because if we then go back to the reason why companies specifically target MBA students, sometimes it is about, in their strategy, it is about building the pipeline in a certain region. And therefore their kind of market knowledge, language knowledge might be quite crucial alongside the international experience that comes with the MBA, or alongside the international experience they can get out of 1 or 2 years in London and then eventually go back to their region. So it is important to understand what is like the company thinking about this kind of talent pipeline for future leaders, and take that into consideration as well as, of course, alongside all the kind of regulations and changes in that space.
With every change comes opportunity. My final question, Natalia, to you. Some of our viewers have been asking questions related to admissions, and of course tomorrow your colleagues from London Business School, from Imperial and from IMD will be going through them in more detail. But so I'm going to take one aspect of applying to business school. What I see is this wonderful opportunity, to step back after 4, 5, 6 years perhaps of working and really think about next steps, the role that business school will play, and of course post-MBA careers. What would your advice be in terms of sharing with the admissions in your application about next career steps? Is it, well, you're going to be able to explore anyway? So really just give a sense of reflection of your background and how that fits in. What sort of advice on thinking about post-MBA careers would you give to someone that will be applying to business school in the months, years ahead?
I would say it would be the same advice that I would give them to decide which business school to go to. It's like really think about your long-term career vision, like what motivates you, where do you, because sometimes we see that MBAs go through like a struggle and questions and answers, but eventually what they end up saying, that deciding that they want to target, it's similar to what they were thinking before, to what was there. So they have to believe in that and think like, okay, this is where I see myself in 10, 15 years. How could I get there? And then find a school that is connected to that area. It's a mix of the content that you are going to find in the school and the style. So for me, it's like when you talk to admissions, you really, I think it makes sense. Like first you need for yourself, you need to decide where you want to be and if that school makes sense by researching their connections, their alumni, like what they do. And then also the culture, like will I fit, talk to people, will I fit in that culture? Do I like that style? Like for example, IMD is very small. Some people like to be anonymous, like you maybe don't like having like everybody in the corridor knowing your name and know what you do, but this is what you will get at IMD. So you need to figure that out to decide where to go. And then to admissions, I think they should be honest, like these are my plans, this is what I'm thinking, but of course we all know that people are willing to explore. And they start up with an idea, and then it's either validate that idea, which, okay, fine, it's great, or maybe once you research, you realize that that's not exactly what you want. But you need to share that idea. And also, if admission says like, maybe we are not the best school for you because we are not aligned, or we might not be able to help you in that particular path, then probably that's even better. It's the same thing that when you do recruitment.
Right. Well, yeah. I mentioned how popular these careers panels are. The three of you have reminded me why, we've talked about reflection, we've talked about the importance of research, effective networking, handling ambiguity, creating opportunities. It's a real inspiration. And I feel with Centre Court being able to capture these sort of insights to help individuals as they think about the right business school for them. So Natalia, Andrea, Zoe, thank you for everything that you've brought in the last 55 minutes, and that people will, I defy anyone to think about ambiguity and how they handle that one. That's a great thorny question, which Zoe, you said we haven't all necessarily answered that one. So I encourage the viewers to think about it, but to all three of you, thank you for a great session. And if you're just capturing this later on YouTube or on Facebook, otherwise stay with us as my co-host John Byrne will be back on air in about 5 minutes with another admissions panel. Thanks to everybody.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.